The Joyful Noise Radio Hour. Welcome to the Joyful Noise Radio Hour. This is the Deerhoof episode, part 2, where we explore further into the live stream first post-lockdown meeting of one of the most important bands in the world. For those of you who missed part 1, Deerhoof has been a band for 26 some years, but this is a band that's used to touring a lot, and due to obvious reasons they hadn't been able to physically be in the same room for the last 2 years. And since they were unable to tour for so long, they decided their first show back should be a live stream for the entire globe. So they all decided to travel into Portland, Oregon, and meet up in Ed's basement to record what would become their new live album, Devil Kids. The weird truth of this is that we had no plans of making this actual just audio record until we saw just how amazing this moment was for the band. Essentially, immediately following the live broadcast of the event, we realized that this just had to be an LP. So, working very quickly and closely with the band, within about 72 hours or so, we came up with the album title and the cover art and the vinyl color, the sequence and the audio, and everything that goes into making a record. We decided to make it limited to 1,000 copies, which we put up for sale, and it sold out within a couple days. So, sorry, you can't buy it. This is a podcast commercial for nothing. But you can listen to the download. It's on Bandcamp. And the audio download comes with a download of the entire video broadcast as well, which I highly suggest you get. So, prior to the second part of my interview with Deerhoof, I will be featuring key tracks from this new live album, which was compiled from the live stream. Hope you enjoy.
No God of no history.
how do I say it? Like, I don't think there's any better band for a label to navigate the apocalypse with.
You're welcome. We would say the same with Joyful Noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been really fantastic. I mean, like those weekly meetings, I mean, especially, whatever, we've all been quite isolated and stuff, and it's getting to know you all, and it's like a lens through which to just like be together. It's a big excuse to actually interact with some people
and like figure out how to recover from that stuff as artists who rely on touring, and as a label that relies on bands playing live to promote records,
Right.
And as individuals who are opposed to the takeover of the algorithm.
With or without an apocalypse, I still think that the nature of our weekly meetings is something that is very special for us because the hands-on quality. If I can tell a story, I had an eye-opening experience one time when we did a lot of the soundtrack, or a lot of our music was in the soundtrack to a Justin Theroux movie called Dedication around 2007. And somehow our tour ended in Los Angeles by coincidence at the exact same time that Justin was doing the final sound mix for the movie. He'd already had a sound mix and it played at Sundance, and it was the toast of Sundance, but then there was a bidding war at Sundance. And who won the bidding war but Harvey Weinstein? Okay, so Harvey Weinstein gets the movie, and in Harvey Weinstein style, he wants to tear it apart, completely re-edit the movie, create a new sound mix.
And of course, when he bought it, he was like, "The music's perfect. Everything's perfect. We'll just do a couple little tweaks." And so Justin was like, "Yeah, it's great. They don't want to get they don't want to bring in a music director or whatever. Right. The music, he specifically said the music is great." And of course, like 2 weeks later, it's like
shredding it to pieces. Okay, yeah. I'm in here on this sound mix. I'm just sitting there. I'm basically observing. At one point, actually, Justin had to leave to have a pre-production call with Ben Stiller on Tropic Thunder, which was the next movie that he'd co-written. And so I actually did the sound mix for the final reel of the movie without Justin there. But mostly I was just sitting there observing. And once in a while, my opinion would get asked. But it was like, I'm sitting there, next to me is a guy in his 60s who you could tell had been an industry man. He was the Pro Tools guy. Then there was a guy sitting next to him who was the Foley guy. Then there was a guy sitting next to him who had recorded the Foley originally. Justin is behind us. Behind him is a plate of cookies. Maybe there's a couple other people there. A lot of people, a lot of voices. It's going okay. Word comes down from Harvey. This section needs a voiceover. The plot is too difficult to understand in this one section of the movie. We need Billy Crudup to record a voiceover, if it just his mental thoughts, to help explain the plot to the audience. Mm-hmm. Justin does not want this voiceover in there. He hates the idea. Harvey never shows up. He sends a representative in to intimidate all of us into putting the voiceover in there. She comes in. You got to put this voiceover. We're like, okay. She disappears for like the rest of the day. The next day, we know she's returning. We spend an hour before her scheduled arrival time crafting. I mean, you can't imagine. This is in a full-size movie, like cinema. I did the rental on this, the cookies, the catering, everything, hours and hours. All these people are getting paid a fortune, except me. The cost on this is astronomical, unimaginable. We spend an hour before the minion shows up, crafting a sound mix of the voiceover so that it will sound bad and prove the point that it doesn't work. Okay? An hour completely wasted. She comes in. listens to it. She's like, yeah, it doesn't really work. It's true. So she goes off in the next room, calls Harvey Weinstein. Harvey's like, make it work. She comes back. Harvey says you have to make it work. Okay, we sit there, grueling, efforts are made. Still doesn't work. Another hour has passed. Then Justin goes around the room to each person in the room and says, well, do you think the voiceover should be in there? He goes to the Pro Tools, the 60s, the guy in his 60s, the Pro Tools guy, the industry guy. Do you think the voiceover should be in there? And he's like, no, I don't really think it works, to be honest. About a half an hour later, we go to lunch, and I'm eating lunch with the Pro Tools guy, and he's absolutely livid. And I'm like, why would you be angry that the director consulted your opinion and asked for your opinion, asked for your 2 cents on making the movie better? He's like, because I'm probably now blacklisted from Weinstein. I probably can't work at Weinstein anymore. And my reputation is ruined in Hollywood, basically, because I went against the studio CEO. And I thought to myself, oh. And what I'm saying about our weekly calls is that there isn't that. Everybody chips in ideas. It's like on every album that we've done together, you have opinions on the track order. Ryan makes a suggestion about what the album title should be. Jess chimes in with which album cover she thinks is her favorite one, and all of these things that should be on paper where these are adversarial relationships. It's the label against the artist. In other words, we're the client, and it's like we should be against each other. You should be trying to screw us, and we're trying to screw you. That's the business model. But instead, we have this thing where everybody's input is valuable, and it's just very touching.
We all want the same thing. I mean, you guys have a very strong vision for what you're doing, and I think all of us here try to understand that the best we can and try to just enhance it and translate it for the outside world. There are a lot of ideas that are thrown out at these meetings that are bounced against the wall and shit. And sometimes some of the big ideas are not the original ones that we started out with.
No, we create them in the midst of a conversation.
Right. And it's what I appreciate about this dynamic is that there is no artistic ego here with you guys. The best idea prevails, regardless of where it came from.
Everybody's allowed to have an opinion about how loud the snare drum is, or everybody's allowed to have an opinion about the color of the vinyl. We don't have to specialize. Everybody can, have a general, point.
I mean, for us, that's been part of what the band is, in the sense that we all have to learn how to do all kinds of different things. We've learned how to produce ourselves, learn how to mix ourselves, learn how to master ourselves. And also throughout this, you're also just learning how to be a person around other people and in communities, and making it something that isn't torturous for everybody involved, and we're all constantly working on this stuff.
You guys know when to trust people and when not to. And there's a moment where you have to delegate some things or else you can't grow. And this happens inside our business too. I can't package every record that's ordered from the website, or else I wouldn't meet in the Deerhoof meetings. You know what I mean?
There's a funny thing about growth, where I think we felt a few years ago that actually we'd reached a point where we do not need to grow, which was a really cool point for us to reach. If you consider it a small business, or you call it a band or whatever, where it's actually I think we're popular enough. I think we have enough fans, we sell enough records, we scrape by. I mean, we're lower class, but we can pay our rent. We can eat, and that feeling of enough is, I think, sometimes kind of an underappreciated, under-celebrated, but it's incredible.
I absolutely understand that. And I've had that same feeling with the label, actually. Yeah. There were moments years ago where I had more employees, any opportunity to grow, I pursued.
Right.
And what I learned through that was I don't want to just endlessly grow. Like, I want to just be sustainable. And for us, what that means is about 10 employees.
Yeah.
We really give a fuck about every record we do, and we do about 8 to 10 records per year. And then a bunch of record series. The opportunity is there to expand, but then I'm a fucking office administrator instead of instead of hanging out with Deerhoof.
Yeah. Part of it is deciding like where it's going to sit in your life.
And all I care about is sustainability, man. That's really
I mean, it's sustainability, but it's also, I think there are many sort of sad but hilarious stories from the corporate world of like where the person who founded the company ended up getting fired by the board.
Right.
Like Men's Warehouse. What was that guy's name? The guy from Men's Warehouse. Yeah, you're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. That guy, founded this company, did all the ads himself. He starred in the ads. He was very recognizable. Eventually, the board thought that the company would do better. Like his vision was too strong. And they were like, no, we don't want your vision anymore. You're fired. You're not the CEO anymore. And then, of course, they immediately crashed and burned and went out of business. But it's like, and the same thing, I think, with Gary Gygax and Dungeons and Dragons, he was fired by the board.
Oh, really?
I think, the guy who invented Dungeons and Dragons was eventually fired from the company. And it's like, I don't know.
There's something about that, like noticing when, where you're happy, like a place, like you don't have to just have this endless growth.
Like there's different kinds of growth, and it enables you to focus on the kind of growth that you actually care about, and that will keep you engaged and will keep you happy, and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
I do think that growth is it's a fantastic word. It's very general, but it's a fantastic word to focus on because it's a word that's thrown around a lot that economists and then their politician lapdogs use this word all the time, and it's always used with a positive connotation. But everybody on the planet knows that it's because of this imperative that every business must grow infinitely, that's what's going to terminate the species, I mean, that's going to end the planet,
Right.
So it's kind of like the world can't be filled with Capitol records.
Yeah, no, it's not part of an ecosystem.
Right. It's sustained through control and through expending massive amounts of capital on.
You mean to keep those big rooms?
Yeah.
And that'll always just burn out.
Speaking of which, would you pay some money to some radio stations to play our new
Most bands that have been around as long as you guys have like one breakout record, and then it seems like they try to sort of recreate that over and over again. And you guys, at least in my mind, there isn't like one Deerhoof record that you must hear.
No, we've never had a hit record.
But all of them are. And it's the fact that you're constantly evolving.
No, but you're making it sound like it was all part of a deliberate design. The fact is,
we
didn't get any hits. And that at the time seemed like, I wonder why we're not getting any hits. And after the fact, nothing but thankful that we never got any hit, because at the time we didn't see what you are describing, but now we see. When you do get a hit, there is pressure on yourself, from the label, from the fans, to do something more or less in the vein of whatever the hit was. You hit the target on that one, so keep trying to hit the target. And we're not really associated with one song or one album or whatever. I think a lot of people that I've talked to at the merch table, and they tell me what their favorite one is, it's usually the first one that they heard.
Yeah.
They often hated it at first, and they listen to it like by the third time. When you go from hating something to loving something, it's a very dramatic experience. So that one sticks in their memory. I know I've had that experience with many records.
All my favorite bands are like that. All my favorite bands, like the first time I hear it, I can't tell if I hate it or love it. For like a little bit. It's like, this is so weird, I can't place it.
Or for me, it's like sometimes like there's some aspect of it that I hate, or that it's new to me, so that some part of my brain is struggling with it.
The audacity.
And then when the audacity, but that process of learning to love something like that is definitely, I mean, relationships are like that too. I mean, it's not like you hate the person.
You getting bigger.
But you get to be, you're expanding your ability to empathize and to see different points of view and to,
You're learning a new language.
A lot of reviewers who have been listening to music a lot, like we would always be like, it's not as good as Apple, or it's not as good. Because like you're saying, it was like, that was the first time they heard the band.
Right.
When they were like, nothing will ever measure up to like this experience they had first hearing the band, like, 10 years ago.
Right.
Whatever. But I think that there's nothing close to like that universal thing of like, this was their album, and like everything else is like kind of like, it's okay, but this is the one. When we set up our set list and stuff, are like, we'll never hit everybody's favorite song, obviously. So but we know we need to play a song off every album, so we can. And a big part of that is so that if we don't somebody's favorite song, we at least play their favorite album.
Yeah.
And we have to play. And doing that, we have to play every album. Because
you do so in your set list, you do intentionally play one track from each record.
Usually,
sometimes, we got a lot of records.
Or you try.
We'll try and have a larger span. It's usually pretty heavy on current stuff,
as it should be, because that's the records that we put out.
Yeah.
But for people listening to this who don't already know, I feel like we should just explain sort of your approach to the pandemic a little bit. So, here's my perspective on it. We were about to release this record called Future Teenage Cave Artists, very apocalyptic themed record that happened to have virus drawings on the cover. Before COVID was a thing, and COVID happened essentially like in between the time that we announced the record and when it came out, or was it before we even announced it? But anyway, it was definitely being pressed and everything. Like the record was well underway, and then COVID happened. We had a whole tour plan. This is supposed to be like a normal record.
Yeah,
I was doing that in January before Canada.
Oh yeah.
All right.
I remember. Yeah.
Right. The drawings you did were.
Yeah, the drawings that she did were pre-COVID. Yeah.
Well, were they pre-COVID? You were hearing news coming from China.
Oh, she was hearing. Right.
I was
okay. Realistically, Prophet, when we realized that holy shit, live shows are not going to be a thing. Like touring is not a thing anymore. At least not for this record. During the course of these weekly meetings that we've been having, you just kept coming up with other ideas to release music, and we ended up releasing 4 records last year.
Yeah.
Future Teenage Cave Artists, and then live Bandcamp only record, and then Love Lore, which is the covers album that only Deerhoof could make. Calling it a covers album sounds like it's cheapening it, but
Deadly.
Yeah.
And then we had Surprise Symphony.
And then Surprise Symphonies,
which was a rarities thing.
Right. You had so much material coming out, but at least from my perspective, it seemed to grow the fan base. All of these things were reaching new people, and your existing fans were really excited to absorb this material during this fucked up time. I don't know if I have a question here or anything, but my
perspective on
acknowledge
that faced with a stressful situation, each human being reacts differently. And faced with this particular situation, which has to do with you must stay home. I mean, we all have friends and family and stuff we know who reacted various ways. Some kind of became very depressed. Some became very scared. Some took it as a chance to relax and do a lot of Netflix, and some people, I think Deerhoof, I know I felt very much this way on the inside, and I think Deerhoof kind of as a band kind of ended up, these are all coping mechanisms faced with a stressful situation, and our coping mechanism was to panic and to think that the world was probably ending any day now. Not only COVID was not the only threat in those days, as we may recall. Basically, in a panicked blur, try to complete as many unfinished projects as possible and to put out, and basically to fill the empty hours with work. It would be easy to pat ourselves on the back and say, well, we did the pandemic well. We were very productive. But productivity is not necessarily, it's not good or bad. I mean, we're always taught, we're raised to believe that that's the goal of life, is to be productive. But I'm not sure that any of us really believes that as a philosophical tenet. I think it's more that just part of that was us coping with empty days. And doing so by throwing ourselves into work. And I know in my case, it was sometimes at the expense of other aspects of personal life. And if I had to do it all over again, I might make different decisions. And I feel that way about a lot of Deerhoof. I've always, even before there was a pandemic, there were many times, when I think that the amount of hours per day that I devoted to being a DIY mixing engineer may have been excessive. And I have some regrets about those years. And I say to myself, like, a friend will come up to me and say, like, Runners 4, like, how in the world you guys do that? I'm so glad you made that record, or any record. And I'm like, if I had to do it over again, maybe no, just skip that one. Skip it. Take that year off, like go to the park.
Too much crying.
Yeah, too much crying.
It was so many tears.
Too much crime.
And I'm not saying that doesn't make us cool. That makes us uncool. What I'm saying is, I think some of our music was for me personally, I feel it was a mistake. I would take it back. If I could do it over again, I wouldn't make those records.
You take the music back or the experience of making it?
What's the difference? I mean, for us, it was the experience. That was our life.
The audience. Like, do you want to erase that?
I would take the audience back.
Would you eliminate those records, those sound waves from the world?
Obviously, once it's done, there's nothing you can do. But I'm saying,
right. But is it about, like, do you regret
yes.
Do you regret the music that's out there, or do you just like regret the experience that it took?
No, because the music only happened because all of those hours were put into it, and it was too many. It was too many hours. The result is a lack of sanity on my part. The result is many years, and I remember like, well, what fun things did I do that year? Boy, I sure sat in front of the computer for a long time. I was just buying the drums, and like Satomi said, just all the tears. I mean, it was like, I don't really regret it. And, at some point you have to, of course, accept what your life was. And of course, a lot of beauty came out of it. And actually, I think Runners 4 is a nice record. And I think all the records that we made together with Ed, sometimes I listen to them and I shed the tears all over again, but I think that they're nice. I think they're pretty, really pretty records. And I'm happy that they're pretty, and I'm happy that we finished them. But in terms of this pandemic, I'm just trying to make the point that just because somebody appears to be productive, that's a capitalist value system that needs to disappear. That we judge human beings on how much stuff they made, and how much stuff they sold, and how much people bought, and how much was manufactured, and how much content was added to the internet. Right. I think that it's double-edged, and I do not. I am proud of everything that we've made in the past 2 years. Like, I really love it. All of us love it, or we would never have released it. Like, we are in love with that music for sure. But like, part of it was a defense mechanism, or a mechanism, a spasm,
right.
Dealing with
this feeling of urgency.
Also kind of like in a situation with very, like, where you're dealing with something you have no control over, whatever. It's like you tend to fall back on the things that you actually know how to do, whether or not it's good for you. Lots of people drank their way through the pandemic. Lots of, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all these things are ways of functioning.
And you also the Leo Smith one.
Yeah. What other
collaboration was the part of the participation of Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We wanted to do something together, and Leo was isolated, but we had this, recordings, and we wanted to be part of the community. We wanted to protest, in some kind of way, but we didn't want to be inside the marching, I kind of participated in it.
No, we all did.
I was in New York, but as a Deerhoof, I think
We couldn't be part of it, so
As your
as a unit.
So I think with the different four albums, but each had a different meaning.
Yeah.
You guys did a lot of benefit components of your various releases. Just about every release we've worked with you on, there's been some charity component, and in the one that Satomi was just talking about, I think you guys raised like $12,000 or something for Black Lives Matter, like overnight, with a live album on Bandcamp. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys live in different cities, and you have for a long time, and you were doing remote recording for, is decades too strong a term?
I think for
15
about
years?
10 years.
Okay. 10 years at least, right? You've been recording remotely. And just this past year, like every other band in the world had to learn how to record remotely. You had like a 10-year head start.
Yeah, so what's our excuse?
I just think that's funny. I think that's part of the reason that the new album sounds so live. The new album sounds like you guys are in the same room.
Yeah.
It sounds raw as fuck.
That was something, maybe that's the story from the record, that's fun to tell, is the conscious effort we made to simulate the experience of being together and playing together, almost as if we created a fake memory.
CG.
Inception.
CGI.
Yeah.
We created a fake memory. You can do this. I was talking to someone the other day about some strange childhood memory that I had. And then they asked, okay, if your current self somehow came into that room at that time, what would you say to your child self? And I'm like, wow. And then I thought about like what I would tell my child self, and it was like very therapeutic and very helpful mental exercise. And then now when I think back to the actual memory, I see myself coming in the room.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. And I feel like this album, at least for me, was a lot like that. It was like creating a false memory that's now implanted in my mind of us actually playing all these together. So then this, the past week when we got together and played them, it was like,
it had already happened.
Never did, but we did.
Yeah, it's so weird because I played the bass section by section, so actually I didn't really play.
Oh yeah,
all the way through.
But then when
same with the drum.
Before we get together, and I was learning it, but because I've already feel like I already played with you guys from just listening to the song so much. That it just didn't feel like I did it. I played for the first time.
Oh no,
and
totally.
When I saw you guys played and heard, it felt like, oh, we played this before.
Exactly. That's exactly how
especially because I heard it so much. It was like I didn't have to think about like how many times did that happen? How many times we played this part? Before this part comes in, it was just like, it's
It was really as if we had been playing for a year. So it's quite an odd thing. Anyway.
Yeah, time is malleable, right? So like maybe your consciousness really did go back in time and play.
If nothing else, our consciousnesses were in some space together for a year.
Well,
it's an imaginary space. It's not your basement. It's not my living room. All the places we actually recorded it. It's a fake space. It's an imaginary space. Maybe it's a little different for each of us, but there's an imaginary space that we all went to, and we were in there together.
And the effect was about the same in your brains as actually playing it together.
I will sometimes vanity search Deerhoof on YouTube, and so I'll watch old shows, or somebody took a video with their phone of some random song. And it's like, this doesn't always happen, but sometimes it doesn't matter how many years ago it is. I'm watching it and I'm like, and I don't remember the show. And of course I don't remember that specific performance of the song. I will know in advance every drum fill that I'm going to play in advance, a few seconds in advance.
Yeah.
I know each next thing that I'm going to do. It's as if myself in that year and myself now got on the same river. And just know it, just everything leads to the next thing, and I can just feel it. And it's like, there's something strange where the act of playing music itself can sometimes feel as though you're going into a different experience of time. Another thing that happens to me a lot on tour is that we'll play a song, and to me, in my memory, the most recent thing that happened in my memory is yesterday's performance of this bar of this song. So in other words, you know, we get to bar 14 of We Do Parties or something, and then the next night we're playing it, and fresh in my mind is what we did last night. That's the freshest memory in my mind is what we did 24 hours before. And now I'm going to react to that. I'm going to reply to that. I'm going to play something a little different than what I played last night. And sometimes just, you know, it's just this funny thing. I mean, writing songs can sometimes be like that for me too. Not always, but sometimes it's as if the song arrives fully formed. You know, so there isn't time. Like an entire 3-minute song hits, and all I have to do is write down, oh, it goes like this, then it goes like this, and there's no other options. You know, it's like sometimes music just feels that way. It's as if the music has its own brain that carries you along in a way that doesn't feel like time. It feels like this eternal static. It's like so what do they call it? You know, who's the ancient Greek philosopher? Like a Platonic ideal or something that just exists in infinite, eternal time, and you somehow manage to lock into it for a second, and you just experience this weird.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of like individual personalities are kind of like that too. Like when you're playing music, you're interacting with your past while you're doing it.
Exactly.
And often a lot of what being a musician is knowing your flaws and knowing, like, for example, the things, I tend to do this.
Right.
And so I'm going to try and not do that. All these like little, just little tendencies are little like, I tend to play this weird melody at this point in this song every time we do it. And like and it's like, it's the things that also will drive each of us crazy from each other. It's just kind of like, do you have to do that? And it's just like, it's like kind of, but I don't have to. But then like, it's funny because that ends up being the stuff that you like come back to. But like that stuff also kind of weirdly doesn't seem to exist in time. It's just like it's like some weird component of your personality that just comes out, you know?
One of my favorite artists right now is somebody called Alok. Do you know this person, Alok, A-L-O-K?
No, I'm not familiar.
So inspiring. And one of the things that they said that I heard in a podcast interview recently, they were talking about ancestors. And particularly in 2021, when identity politics is like an obsession in the mainstream discourse, we tend to think of ancestors as being blood family, or like an ethnic or racial heritage, or national heritage or something, and that would be your ancestors. Alok wanted to introduce this idea that the ancestor is someone who faced some of the same issues or problems or challenges that you face, or who was playing with the same materials, or was
psychological
struggling against the same kind of and so as an artist, it can be like, just take your pick on an infinite number of art parameters. Like, how do you deal with repetition? How do you deal with melody? How do you deal with volume? How do you deal with key changes? How do you deal with trying to please an audience? How do you make people dance? And it's like, anything. I mean, you could make a list that would go for 10 hours. Any of the things that you find yourself concerned with, people in the past have been concerned with something similar. They've also been grappling with the same stuff. And those are your ancestors, and they can teach you things. And I thought that was just the most beautiful idea. And that also creates this feeling of like across time, the human species, and in many cases animals too, because they often behave and they have gestures and they sing and they, we have so much in common DNA with every living thing on this planet. We have, a tree or a watermelon might be our ancestor that is also in some way experiencing what life is on planet Earth, and that they have something to teach us. It just struck me as a very profound idea that there's something eternal,
right?
That somehow you're
like a unifying principle.
You're just kind of asking the same question.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the universe or something, and that can feel also like you're not really in time, feeding into some thing that goes back millennia.
Are you guys familiar with the stoned ape theory?
Yes, they ate a specific mycelium. That was the threshold changing,
it's kind of like the catalyst for
paradigm shifting
brain
thing that caused the human brain to become Homo sapiens.
Our ape ancestors or whatever, when the climate in Africa dried out, they were in canopies, trees dried out, they had to go down on the ground and start to hunt, so they would be following scat of animals.
Right.
And that's exactly where psilocybin mushrooms grow. And so they would eat those, and then they would trip.
Yeah.
They would have psychedelic experiences as monkeys. And then doing that over the course of thousands of years is what led to our brain
structures, breakthroughs,
and us
evolutionary mutations.
Right. Like the new pathways to be formed.
If you look at how mushrooms operate, how they share resources between trees underneath, it doesn't seem too far-fetched. That would fuck with our brains and expand it.
I mean, even if it didn't, even if that's not the reason for an evolutionary mutation, it's obvious that somebody ate some mushrooms. I mean, of course.
Right.
But I'm just saying, the reason I thought of that is because mushrooms are the ancestor.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Also,
specifically with mushrooms, anything psychedelic.
Mushrooms might have come from space too. There's some
the
evidence for that.
Yeah. No, but the idea that basically, a crutch or a helper to open access to the unconscious, and it's not the psilocybin is certainly not the only such thing. I mean, sleep deprivation, a sensory deprivation chamber. I think also repetition. I mean, that's one that's been used
breath work, dude.
Many times where you drone or you just bash the same rhythm over and over again, and you start to or breathing exercises. And frankly, I mean,
have you guys ever done?
For us, it's playing rock songs. I mean, to me, that's definitely a way that we open a door to our own unconscious. And
psilocybin and LSD, I view them as shortcuts. But they're not the only way to that different state of mind.
No. It exists already. The unconscious is already there.
Yeah, it's already there.
Tricking yourself to access your own imagination or creativity is a lifelong.
We've been doing holotropic breathwork classes.
Oh, right.
At our office occasionally, which is basically just insane heavy breathing with controlled atmosphere that over the course of 4 hours basically results in the same thing as a psilocybin mushroom trip without any substances or anything.
Right.
You can get to this other state of consciousness through breathing, or through music. I remember my first band, it was meditative, man. When we would play, that's when we knew it was good. Is it zoned out entirely?
I find less that Deerhoof is the type of band where I zone out entirely, and more the type of band where I feel almost a pile, a layer cake of possible states of mind.
Yeah.
So there isn't just, hey, there's that boring everyday state of mind, and then there's the psychedelic state of mind, and those are the two things, and I just want the psychedelic one. I feel like I can go back and forth. I can travel between different states of mind, and the songs themselves are maybe not shortcuts, but they are activities through which you can, like this one part of this song is kind of a zony part, or this part is I really have to concentrate on the mathematics of it, or this part moves my emotions in such a way that it's not psychedelic, it's just very, very emotional, et cetera, to infinity. And because the music's pretty simple and kind of loose, so that it's a little different every time,
I would not call
yeah,
it
you
loose.
feel like you can travel.
Yeah.
I can travel the states of mind.
Definitely.
You feel that too?
Yeah.
Like what?
I think that, and we also play together for so long that I feel like I can get feed from you guys.
Right.
You know, like I feel like it's gonna go out of tune. And then I go to different states. John's playing faster than. I was like hoping for or something. And then suddenly I get really like high, and then sometimes those I push octave and this repetitive thing, and I get zoned out and this kind of stone.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
But our song goes so changes
it goes a lot of places.
And then it can go really fast. I can get out fast.
Yeah, exactly.
You practice changing the states.
Well, and also there's a sense of security where you know that if something great happens, that odds are
something terrible happens.
I think especially when you're playing with other people, like there is a certain, there has to be this trust, let go of ego, where it's like sometimes you do something and you could be like, oh, if everybody followed me, it would be incredible, or whatever. With this, it's just there's been enough times where it's like I know if I'm doing this and what I would do, what I would do is I think if this happened, it would be great. And then Greg will stop playing drums, or feedback thing, or something like that, or John will smack his head into my headset. I feel like I know all of you so well, but there's still enough. There's every single show, there's still something how did you think of that? It's just what are you doing? That kind of thing where it's just where I'll just
every time
crack, crack up, and it'll be
You're still exploring.
A lot of times I've played with people and it's the simplest things. I played in another band, and in that band they did count-offs to start the song, and I would miss it every single time, because just the concept of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I would seriously be like, what are you doing? It wouldn't register to me that meant anything of 1, 2, 3, 4. I was just
oh my god,
you're counting, cool.
Well, it's so funny because Deerhoof is so ready to adjust to whatever that happens, because sometimes I just count off. I don't know why I do this, but 1, 2, 3, and then we
1, 2, 3 is more. There's nothing wrong with that either. This band goes quickly between mindsets, let's say, and I don't know why we do that. And we didn't set out to traverse layer cakes of mindsets, in 1994. It's just something I'm observing after the fact.
I've read the manifesto.
You didn't. That wasn't part of your plan back in the day.
It always has been.
Listen, guys.
The layer cake, the Waffle House. It
Layer
might be
cakes
time
of
for dinner.
mindset.
I think we're hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I got food on the brain.
Well, I mean, we could talk about other stuff too, but I just got an idea for a way to end this episode whenever that time is ready. So you don't necessarily rehearse like normal bands. You all live in different cities, and sometimes you'll fly into a show and then rehearse the song backstage by slapping your knees and sort of humming.
How do you know this?
One of you told me this, and I don't remember which of you, but could you do that? Could you do that for one of the songs on the new album?
You mean right now?
Yeah.
He means right now. Carl is talking now.
You're playing. That's hard, Carl. We don't even have. We only have.
Instruments are all downstairs in the basement.
You don't need instruments. It's all on your knees, right? It's all just
No,
like,
Greg's on his.
Oh, just Greg.
oh, just Greg.
Greg.
I thought all of you guys were just like humming, like doing a
Let's try
cappella.
that. Yeah, we could. Okay. Or just. Oh, okay. You thought let's just try Scarcity. Play your Scarcity with playing your parts on your knees.
Are we ready?
Okay. Oh, I thought we were just.
Oh wait! I thought we were gonna.
You can go downstairs and do it for real.
No.
Okay, plant thief. Okay, ready?
Yeah. It's
All right.
almost
Okay.
All right, here we go. John's making a face. I can't do it. Oh no, the face. Do not use under any circumstance.
Bad preview? No, don't.
Bad preview.
Bad preview.
Bad preview. Oh, this
Thanks,
is
Carl.
paleo.
This is fun.
This is more like an audio book than a podcast going on for 2.5 hours.
No, it's great. Got deep.
Well, thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks
All
for
right.
talk to you soon.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Joyful Noise Radio Hour.